It's a sign. And we're talking about signs today. We are talking about signs from God. And part of the topic is in the Old Testament. When you read the Old Testament, it sounds like God just showed up, either as a voice or in person, with the white beard, etc., and long hair, and had conversations with people, just out and out conversations. And so some of us, you got it? You mean I can be quiet? Okay.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So while we're getting the next, clapping. While we're getting the next video ready, it's a great idea to practice empathy. And anytime you want me to practice empathy on you, call me up. I'll be happy to practice it on you. You might have to warn me. I need you to practice empathy. Well, the sandwiches is not empathy. That was an example of sandwiches as, not the empathy. But sandwiches are also good. There's a time for sandwiches. And then, but the point I wanted to make about that little video, that'll occur later in the talk, is that not only do I want you to practice empathy with other people, I really want you to practice empathy with yourself. I want you to talk to yourself that way and behold yourself that way when there's a little rain cloud over your head. Gentleness and love and empathy. Okay, now the next is a completely different mood. It is a science video about why would anybody want to meditate. Here we go.
ASAPscience.com. For thousands of years, people have practiced meditation for spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being. But from a scientific perspective, how exactly does meditating affect your body? Does it really do anything? It all starts in the brain. During meditation, brain scans see increased activity in regions directly correlated with decreased anxiety and depression, along with increased pain tolerance. The default mode network in particular is activated when one's mind is at rest and not focusing on the outside world, and has been found to improve memory, self-awareness, and goal setting. Want to be more caring to your friends and family? When scientists compared the brains of Buddhist monks to new meditators, they found the region of the brain associated with empathy to be much more pronounced in the monks. It also literally changes your brain waves, and we can measure these frequencies. Meditators have higher levels of alpha waves, which have been shown to reduce feelings of negative mood, tension, sadness, and anger. And if that wasn't enough, it also physically changes our brain shape and size. Studies found that after 8 weeks of a meditation program, gray matter was more dense in areas associated with learning, memory processing, and emotion regulation. And yet the amygdala, which deals with stress, blood pressure, and fear, had decreased gray matter. When we look at the entire body, not only do we see decreased blood pressure, but it can also increase the variability of your heart rate. And while this may sound harmful, it actually plays a critical role in properly transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout your body. Think you're getting sick? In a study where both meditators and non-meditators were given the flu virus, meditators were able to produce a greater number of antibodies and had increased immune function. If we go a little deeper, we can even see changes on a cellular level. Your chromosomes have protective protein complexes called telomeres, which help reduce damage to your DNA and lower cell death. And a shortened telomere length has been linked to several diseases such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cancer. Amazingly, when cancer survivors completed a meditation program, their bodies showed significant increases in telomere length. It's believed that psychological intervention, particularly decreasing stress, has a direct effect on the enzyme telomerase, which has been shown to counteract shortening by adding DNA to the shrinking telomeres. Of course, meditation is not a substitute for other medical advice or a healthy lifestyle. We don't want you leaving this video thinking it will cure cancer. But much like hitting the gym can grow your muscles and increase your overall health, it seems that meditation may be a way of working out your brain with extra health benefits. And since your brain controls, well, all of you, why not relax and say, every once in a while? And if you like working out your brain, be sure to get our ASAP Science book, which is now available for pre-sale at asapscience.com/book. We've got answers to your most asked burning questions, persistent rumors, and unexplained phenomenon. Whether you're a huge science fan or just a curious mind, the book has something for everyone, and we're so excited for you to read it and show off your newfound knowledge to all your friends. Thanks again for all the support through the years, helping us share a love of science with the world. And subscribe for more weekly science videos.
It's that Seattle thing. I got to have the light on. So, yesterday was the first day I started training for running the Disneyland Half Marathon. I know, isn't that cool? Yeah. But the reason I wanted to talk about training was because I have some secrets to running that can be applied to more than just running. My secret to running is to start small, little bits of running, and to start slow, and to keep it enjoyable. Now, it's not just me, but there's a trainer associated with those Disneyland half marathons, or the marathons and everything, and he tells people to run 3 or 4 minutes and then walk 1 minute. And a couple times this winter I ran and I didn't have my little timer on, so I just ran. And I noticed that I was really tired, but yesterday I got everything ready. I had my run keeper timed to time 3 minutes of running and 1 minute of walking. And it made a huge difference. And also, the way I keep it enjoyable is I just don't like to run when it's cold. I've tried a few times, but when it's cold and my muscles, it just doesn't work for me. It might work for some people because I do love to be outside. That's part of what's enjoyable to me, to be outside. So, all the strategies I have for running apply to spiritual practice in a very direct way. When you start a spiritual practice, you need to, such as meditation, you need to start slow and with small amounts. Do not start with meditation with, I'm going to meditate an hour every day. Don't do that. Start with 5 minutes. And don't start meditating in an uncomfortable position. Find somewhere that's peaceful, hopefully beautiful and restful for you, comfortable. Most meditation teachers tell you to sit up and not lie down because you just might fall asleep. But you want to find a place. I actually have a comfy chair. I like to sit on the couch with a lot of pillows and have a soft fuzzy blanket and have a timer. And on days when I am resisting meditation, I set my timer for 5 minutes. And then I tell myself, if I wanted to meditate more, I can. The other thing about running is you don't start running 6 miles. When I actually start running after not running for a long time, I start with a 1/4 mile. Because if you started with too much, you wouldn't enjoy it. And, you would just remember that was hard. I didn't want to do that. So if 5 minutes seems like too long, I invite all of us to start with 3 minutes. I think, or 2 minutes. But if you started with 2 or 3 minutes every day, that would be a really good spiritual practice. Now, like everybody, I have had dark hole times. When we saw that little video, you've all been in that dark hole, and it looks kind of cute when it's a cartoon, but when you're actually in the dark hole, you all remember how terrible it feels. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I remember probably the first couple of times I was in a dark hole, I had no spiritual practice. I believed in God, and I knew that you could pray, but I did not have any connection to a regular spiritual practice. I really was sure there was a higher power of some kind, but I didn't feel a personal connection. So like the first time I got a serious broken heart, I was really, really miserable. I mean, so miserable, I didn't know how I could go on. And I did manage to go on, really, I think, because of the grace of God, or the grace of the universe, as it were. But I didn't have a spiritual practice. And of course, when you live, you end up having your heart broken in one way or another, and you end up having loss, and you end up having circumstances to deal with that are dreadful and horrible, really bad. And the next, and let's fast forward. So there was me with no spiritual practice. I got over that. It took a long time. It took therapy, antidepressants, and years to get over that broken heart. And the other thing was, the way that I faced it was I numbed myself. I can actually remember saying to myself, this is not happening. You've ever done that? Like, this is so painful, it is not happening. I am just not going to be present for this. It was almost a very conscious decision not to be present for that pain because it was so bad. But we know the downside of that. When we numb ourselves to pain in that way, we numb ourselves to our aliveness, we numb ourselves to everything. So we're not available for the goodness of life when we numb ourselves to the pain. And this is not judgy, and we all do what we have to do to get through things. But it's just an observation that there is a downside to choosing to go unconscious and choosing to numb yourself and choosing to stuff it down. There's that downside. That you can't really stuff it down, or you can't get rid of it by stuffing it down. You can stuff it down, but it's still there. Pain, whatever there is. So I was lucky enough to have some more terrible things happen to me, one of which was I got divorced. That was really painful. And I know I've shared this before. I must have said a prayer. I remember coming to some kind of self-awareness and saying, okay, what is going to stop me from doing this again? That was a prayer to the universe. Shortly after that, I discovered what was going to stop me. I discovered a lot of spiritual growth. I discovered unity. I discovered A Course in Miracles. I discovered many things. I discovered meditation. And I discovered spiritual community. I discovered people who I could learn and practice with. And then the next time something happened that was terrible and horrible and miserable, it was completely a different experience. It was like night and day. And if you've ever suffered from depression, you know what I mean. When you're in the dark night, it's a very different experience than when you come out of it. I'm not saying it's the night and then complete happiness, Christmas morning. It's just like the dark night and then you can breathe, right? You can feel your aliveness. You don't have to shut it down. The pain is so bad. I mean, really, that's what depression is. It's that the pain is so bad that we go into that numbing. I am here to assure you from my perspective and many other spiritual teachers' perspective that meditation and other daily spiritual practices are what is going to help us the next time something truly terrible happens. Now, I want to share some scripture because I was thinking about God talking. Like I said, in the Old Testament, God talks. And sometimes don't you just want God, like, could you quit messing around and just be clear? Could go ahead and tell me to, sacrifice a lamb or whatever. Could you be clear? So this is from 1 Kings chapter 19. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. Even in the Old Testament, there's this clue. The Lord, God, our connection to higher self, is in the sound of sheer silence. I love it when it feels like in my life that I get a clear message from Spirit. And sometimes I do get a dramatic message. But if I never stop, I'm probably never going to hear a message. I don't know about you, but when I think about the Old Testament, I still have a little bit of it's almost a cultural belief that in the olden times, God really did talk to people. I don't really believe that's the way it happened, but there's a part of me that thinks, and I invite you to ask yourself, is there a part of you that thinks that, well, they had it, those Hebrews, when they were wandering around the desert, they might have been wandering around the desert, but God talked to them, God was really clear. He sent down those tablets, right? He talked to Moses all the time. So do you have an idea that maybe there was an outside God that talked to people? Do you have that in your conscious? Well, I believe it's quite a bit in our culture, and there's a lot of movies and there's a lot of books and stories about that, about how excited we are when Spirit talks to us in a really clear way. Now, I didn't watch any of those Easter movies, but I think if you watch like the Bible and things like that, there's a voice of God talking. It's pretty clear. And also, there's a lot of movies where we get messages from somewhere. I want to show, I watched a movie yesterday and it just sort of changed the whole direction of my talk. Because it's really a movie about getting saved. And it's got a very interesting Unity type twist to it. Now, I'm going to talk about the movie Interstellar, and I'm going to try really hard not to give anything away. Does anybody see that movie? Okay, a couple people saw it. I'm going to warn you when you have to put your hands over your ears if you don't want it spoiled. But let me just set you up for this movie. Interstellar is another movie about humanity's last days on Earth. Things aren't going so well. There's another dust bowl. And the very interesting thing is that the scientists, NASA had to go underground for some reason, which is, like literally underground and also hide from the population because the population was interested in food, not space. But so NASA is underground and they start to notice some anomalies, which they're calling gravity anomalies. And I don't really understand how that works. But all I know is they figure out that the gravity anomalies are a message from some wiser beings that point them in the direction of a wormhole past Saturn. And if you go through the wormhole, there will be 10 inhabitable planets that humanity can choose. Okay? So, and the interesting point is that there was this message delivered. Okay? There was a message delivered. So I'm going to turn off the lights again. We're just going to watch about a minute of it to get in the mood. Space travel.
Hey, Coop. Can we stop the spinning?
Why?
Because we're close enough to see it now.
All right.
Thanks. There, that's it. That's the wormhole.
You say don't spray it, Ron. It's a sphere.
Well, of course it is. What you thought it would just be a hole.
No, it's just that all the illustrations I've ever seen,
The illustrations. I'll show you how it works. So they say you want to go from here to there. But it's too far, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a wormhole bends space like this, so you can take a shortcut through a higher dimension. Okay, so to show that, they've turned three-dimensional space into two dimensions, which turns a wormhole into two dimensions. A circle. What's a circle in three dimensions?
sphere.
Exactly. Spherical hole. But who put it there? Who do we have to thank?
Well, I'm not thanking anybody until we get out of here in one piece, Ron. Hey, trick to this door? No one knows. How the others made it, right? At least some of them.
They did make it through the wormhole. And they acted on the information received from the beings through the gravity that told them where to go and how to get there. And I like this because to me it's a modern day telling of the story of God talking. It's another way that God talks to us. And I would say that God, that was a really cool movie, and there was a lot of time and space and going back in time and things like that, or going forward in time. And I can assure you that God is available the same way God was available in the Old Testament, and the same way that God is available in a movie like that. One of our time travels is through what people wrote for us a long time ago. I'm just going to read a few things. I love to say this all the time. This is from Socrates, as Plato wrote it. The unexamined life is not worth living. Plato died in 348 BCE. This is from Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor. He died in 180 current era. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than his own soul. Someone more modern, Carl Jung. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And this last is from Eknath Easwaran, who just died about 20 years ago. At the beginning of every winter, people are careful to install storm windows. These extra panes of glass protect their houses against the bitter winds. We do something very similar to protect our minds through the practice of meditation. It is possible to go through horrible and terrible loss and find that in passing we are transformed. And I do not ever want to go through anything like that again without meditating, without a spiritual practice, a daily, a weekly spiritual practice that connects me to my source. Now, this is a time if you are going to go see Interstellar, plug your ears. Go la 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 la. Because here is the beauty of and why it's such a unity message. The people, the beings that were talking to the scientists were actually the scientists themselves, who went into some weird time, space place where they could communicate with their own selves back in time. And there's a lot more scientific stuff to it. But the beauty of that is, I love it. It's like, it's us telling ourselves, it's the God in us that is available for us, telling us what we need. Okay, I think you can take your hands off. You're free. I won't do any more spoilers. I love that. I love that. And that's what I believe the inspired Bible writer was talking about, the sound of sheer silence. There's all this stuff about God talking this and that, and then out of the blue, there's this beautiful part where God wasn't in the wind, God wasn't in the noise, God wasn't in the fire, God was in the silence. Now, our assignment, and I include myself in this, there's just a couple more things to remember. I invite you to add spiritual practice to your life. I hope I've convinced you that meditation is a good thing to start. And like running, I want you to start with a little bit. Get a timer. Make it feel good. It's not supposed to be intolerable. Set it up in a nice place. Set yourself up for success. If you want to, find a teacher. There's lots of people who teach meditation. I'll teach you meditation. There's a lot of teachers on the web. Get a gong. Come to the gong meditation here every Tuesday. Get a meditation app. Get a group. Start small. Keep it enjoyable. But do it, because I can assure you, you will have circumstances. Let's take an offering for unity.